At age 18, I joined the United States Navy. It was the happiest moment of my entire life, and is one of the greatest feelings I ever experienced. And probably also one of the most anxious moments of my entire life. It was a new adventure for me, and I wasn't sure what to expect. Those feelings changed to wry amusement when I arrived at boot camp, and people in crisp uniforms began marching about and shouting at us. Very loudly. Some kids even began to cry. Me? I felt right at home. I went to church once in boot camp, and then I came to a moral crossroads. I could either continue worshiping God on my Sundays, or I could catch up on my sleep. Sleep it is. After boot camp graduation, I went to Lackland Air Force Base in San Antonio, Texas, for my A school as a naval military police officer. I thought I was hot shit. I even had a girlfriend. We were young, dumb, and our idea of falling in love was sneaking into empty barracks room and having sex while on patrol. She was on Navy birth control, and that shit was potent, and I figured that was protection enough and didn't need to wear a condom. That was my first mistake. 2 months later, we graduated and left, me to go to Everett, Washington, and her to go to San Diego. But first, I went home on leave to see my family, and I invited her to come along and meet them as well. That was my second mistake. My family hated her. It was scandalous, the fact that I brought a woman home with me, even though she had driven up in her own car, and they insisted that she get her own hotel room and we not be allowed to see each other unsupervised. Then, when she was safely ensconced in her own hotel room for the night, my family moved in. I was told how strange she was, how evil it was to wear skull sweatshirts, and how women who had short hair were dressed immodestly. That's right, short hair equals immodesty. My family worked on me until I was convinced that I needed to break up with her. It was ugly, to say the least. That was in June of that year, and I did not speak to her again until Christmas Eve. By that point, I had moved out to Everett, Washington, and settled into a life of partying on the base. I was the youngest and most junior qualified small craft operator, and I spent all day patrolling the waters in the harbor police boats, and sometimes in the squad cars, and I would spend the rest of the night drinking and partying. My drinking buddy was an E6 who was married, but his wife and kids lived back east, and he took every opportunity he had to party as hard as he could and sleep with any woman he was able to get into bed. Every day after work, he and I would grab a fifth of vanilla vodka and a 12 rack of Coke. If you mix them together, it tastes just like a vanilla Coke. We'd pound the whole bottle, bullshit for a little while, then he'd go off and find a girl, and I would play video games until I fell asleep. Every single night. Then my ex called me on Christmas Eve. She told me she was pregnant. I'll tell you, nothing clears a hangover faster than being told you're about to be a father. I told her I was excited. I was ecstatic. Terrified, but ecstatic and happy. And then she told me not to get too excited because she had actually had an abortion, and she had just wanted to see what my feelings would have been and if I had wanted to keep the child or not. I felt my heart lurch. Growing up, abortion was the single evilest act that has ever been committed. And even to this day, even though my views on it have changed, I still have a knee-jerk reaction when I think about the subject. And back then, it was devastating to me. We talked a little more, and then she hung up, but not before she said, "Have a nice life." Ironic, that was the same line I had used when I had broken up with her. I was stunned. Stood there in the slushy rain, unsure of what to do. And then I prayed. I prayed for help. I prayed for guidance. And I prayed for forgiveness. I prayed to God that He would fix in me whatever was so broken. And then, like every other time in the past, when I had prayed, when I had begged for forgiveness, when I had begged for guidance, for counselful help, what I got in return was nothing. Not a damn thing. I didn't feel any better. I didn't have an answer, and I couldn't see any change. But maybe this was God's way of saying that I needed to go back to church. Maybe this was punishment for not going to church. Maybe I couldn't hear anything from God because my soul was too black for God to even notice. Maybe I needed to go to confession and communion and truly repent of my sins and beg God for forgiveness. It was worth a shot, I figured. So I began going to church again. I went to confession and I poured out my sins to the priest, and even included everything about the abortion and things leading up to it. I was told to repent of my sins, and I did. I truly repented. I truly asked God for forgiveness, and I accepted Him. I begged God's mercy, and I have never prayed to God with such fervor and sincerity before. And again, nothing. I couldn't figure it out. I was not receiving any answer. Not a yes, not a no, not a maybe, not a wait, not a go fuck yourself. Nothing. There was simply no answer. I kept attending, but I always sat in the back of the church, and I tried to leave almost as soon as Mass was over. Every once in a while I would get snagged into talking to someone, and once I got introduced to some person's daughter, very awkwardly, and it took me about 30 minutes to drag myself away. I didn't like talking to the parishioners. After high school, I had a distaste for traditional Catholics. I felt they were very hypocritical and extremely gossipy, and I really wanted nothing to do with them. But I continued to go because I believed, even though I hated the people and the strange questions I got. It made sense when I found out that my mother was in contact with several of the parishioners that attended the church and was keeping tabs on me. I left immediately. I could put up with the religious fanatics and their strange attempts at marrying me off to their daughters, but what I could not put up with was my mother spying on me from 2 states away. So I left, which was a good thing, because not long after that, I actually moved off of base and into a party house. This house, actually, it's a lot different now, a lot more domesticated, but back in the day, this was a bachelor pad. Back then, it was wild and fun. And if I thought that I had partied hard on base, when I moved here, I partied like a god. My roommate and I loved our fun, loved our friends, and we loved our alcohol. We had a blast. And surprisingly, I actually met a girl after I moved in here. We began dating, and it felt like the real thing. She was beautiful, witty, charming, a helicopter pilot, an ex-drug addict, and boy could she party. She could hold her own against all of us party nuts. We both enjoyed a good time. And then, I fucked up. I cheated. To this day, this is still one of the few things that I have not forgiven myself for. I know I should, but I used to hold myself to such a high standard, and I was always so proud of never doing that, that when I did, I could no longer say that I was such a good person, because I had set that bar so high that even to this day, I continue to feel guilt for that action. An ex-fling of mine came back into my life and was supposed to be coming over for a triple date with her and her fiance, my roommate and his girlfriend, and me and my girlfriend. I went to go pick them up, and I was informed that her fiance was sick, but insisted that she go out and have fun. Naively, not realizing anything was up, I said okay. Later on, I would find out that he was out of town. He wasn't even there. So I drove her back to my house, and come to find out that my girlfriend had left because she wasn't going to wait around to party. And then my roommate and his girlfriend decided that it was boring and they weren't going to wait around and party either. I was pissed, and I poured myself a drink. Then my ex-fling poured me another one, and another one, and another one, until I was blackout drunk. And I woke up next to her in the morning. I felt horrible about it immediately, and I immediately went and told my girlfriend exactly what had happened, and asking for her forgiveness, and even saying if she wanted to break up with me, I wouldn't hold it against her. Surprisingly, we didn't. We decided to work through it, which was good, because 2 months later, my ex-fling called me up and said she was pregnant. She said that we were pregnant, and that God had blessed us with this gift. At the time, I did not concur. In fact, I was of the opinion that God was cursing me yet again for something that I had done or failed to do. Now, don't get me wrong. I absolutely love my daughter more than life itself. But at the time, I thought my life was over. I told her that I was still with my girlfriend and that we were working things out. She wasn't expecting that. Later on, actually, I find out that she told my landlady, who's like the mother I wish I had, that she had purposely kept getting me drunk and had sex with me, hoping to get pregnant so then we would get married and be a happy little family. Yeah, no. It's not how it works. I wanted nothing to do with her. And once again, I turned to God for answers. What to do? And once again, he was silent. Nothing. I didn't understand how people could claim to hear God or to feel God or to have a relationship with him when I couldn't hear anything. I couldn't feel anything. I never felt his presence. I never felt like I was being talked to. I never felt like he was watching me. I felt completely alone. I figured he must just hate me. So I decided to hate him back. He had abandoned me my whole life. So I would turn my back on him. Non servium, in the words of Lucifer, I will not serve. No longer was I willing to believe that I was worthy of hell for my abject worthlessness. But I concluded that God had abandoned me, and I was done bowing. I was done serving. I was done being a sheep. I was done being a Christian. Non servium. I will not serve.